So the biggest mistake I would tell you that most, I don't want to say the biggest mistake, but this is something I see happen a lot. When people are looking at a property to purchase, an apartment property. This has to do with the analysis part of it. So, so what do you think the first thing is that people, when they're looking at investing in an apartment property, look at? What do you think it is? Yeah, it's the rent. So, okay, location, right? Location's probably the most important thing. It is the most important thing, actually. You know, the old location is true with apartment communities in a big way, especially when it comes to resale, and I'll talk about resale here in just a second too, but it's the numbers. And most people make the mistake of concentrating all of their effort on how much rent they can get. And by the way, you do want to spend time on that. It's kind of logical. And we like owning apartments and taking over apartments where we know we can raise the rent realistically and increase revenues realistically. So that goes without saying. But there's gold mines in the expenses. There's gold mines in the expenses. So the ability to look at, and this is almost really like looking at any other business. So if you ran a manufacturing business for 30 years, okay, and somebody approached you and said, hey, would you have an interest in buying my manufacturing business? You'd be able to look at their numbers and you would be able to know where you could improve them, right? Because you know the business. Well, same goes with apartments. So I can look at the expenses, I can look at the numbers, and I know automatically, right away, what we can realistically improve. And it's most of the time in the expenses, not the income. Okay. And the main reason is many owners tend to get locked into routine and habit when it comes to their expenses. And so insurance is a real good example. You know, we've been getting our insurance with Joe at Joe's insurance company for 20 years, and so Joe's our insurance guy. Well, you know, you could be saving $2,500 a year in premiums on your insurance. $2,500 a year, but to the bottom line, that's an extra $30,000 to $40,000 now in property value I'm going to get by moving my insurance over to Sally and Phil. Same coverage, but my premium is lower. Okay. Here's a good example. So I talked with some folks the other day looking over their expense numbers about their property taxes. So their property taxes their property is assessed. The tax assessor feels their property is worth like $1.1 million. No, $1.05 million. Okay. Their property is really worth about $850,000, but the assessor thinks it's $1.05 million. So I know that if we were to buy that, I can go in there and I can lower those taxes, which would put another $7,000 to $8,000 of income to the bottom line, which would increase the value of that property $100,000. Okay, let's just say $80,000 to $100,000. So just with those two examples I just gave you, just say, let's say it's an easy $100,000 to the bottom line, right? Well, not a lot of people do that. That's not, see, and the cool thing about what I just talked about there is we haven't spent any money on improvements, we haven't spent any money on repairs, we've just done a math exercise, right? That's where a lot of opportunity lies, but not a lot of people know that. They want to focus on the income, right? Which, think about what I just told you. You increase the income now on top of that. Now what do you have? A lot of value. We took a property one time, and you can't do this on every property, so I want to make sure I tell you that. So not every property, but more than what you would think you'd be able to. So we bought a property for $4 million, and we went through this process knowing what we knew. The property appraised for over $1.2 million higher a year later, and we put zero money in capital improvements in the property. Okay? So why? Because we paid attention to that gold mine there. And that's where I recommend you spend your time at first. I mean, you always pretty much know you can improve the income, raise rents. There's really not much magical about that. Of course, you can talk about how much and when, but it's really in those expense numbers is where you really find some of those golden nuggets.